Nearly every interaction we have is a negotiation. If somebody's trying to get you to say yes, you are in a negotiation, whether that is purchasing a car or being on a first date. In this video, we're gonna show you how to do it right. Hi, my name's Tyus and I make videos about personal freedom. James Altucher tweeted, "If you can't walk away from a negotiation, then you're not negotiating. You're working out the terms of your enslavement." So let's work on your freedom. Keeping in mind that we're in a negotiation right now. See, I'm wanting your attention and you're wanting good information. So hit the subscribe button and I'll make sure to give you more good information. I'd appreciate it. Now this video is going to be broken into 3 parts. The first part is going to be what to do in a negotiation. The second part is going to be what not to do in a negotiation. And the third is going to be some scummy negotiation tactics. So first things first is you're going to want to do your research. You're going to want to figure out, what is the going rate? If it is an item, you can go online and figure out what the price point of it would be if it was new. If it's used, you can find out what the price point would be on places like eBay or OfferUp. Maybe you're trying to offer somebody a job and you need to figure out the going rate for that. Well, there's a website called Glassdoor.com which will tell you exactly what the price point of competitive jobs are. You're gonna wanna figure out what is the competition, or what does the other party need? Maybe they need to hit a quota by the end of the month, or maybe they need a certain amount of time every month. Who knows what somebody needs, but if you can figure out what those needs are, you're gonna have a huge advantage in a negotiation because you're going to be able to speak directly to that person's needs, even when they might not bring them up. And also you're gonna wanna research and consider what concessions you're willing to make. Maybe you wanna buy a car, but you don't really care about the color or the size or the price. I don't know what you don't care about, but figure out what you don't care about, because that way, those are gonna be things that you can take off the table and make the negotiation clearer and simpler for everybody involved. Make sure that you set good and solid deadlines. One thing that a lot of people will do is try to wear you down with time, whether that's a hostage negotiator or a car salesman. They will try to wear you down over time because they don't have to go anywhere, but you might. So make sure that you say up front, this is how much time I have and I can't go any longer than that. If you violate that, I'm gonna walk out the door. Set a good deadline. One of the most common mistakes people make early on in a negotiation is they keep their cards too close to their chest. And what I mean by that is they don't share any information. They feel like the more information they give, the more it's going to be used against them, which is actually the opposite of what happens. You want to give out as much information as you can. You want to tell them what your expectations are, what your needs are. This does a few things. One, it helps let them know what you're valuing and what you're not valuing, what you're prioritizing and what you're not prioritizing. And it also creates a human connection, which is going to build empathy. And with that empathy, they're not going to look at you as a competitor, as a villain, as a demon. They're going to look at you as a person. And they're going to try and find a resolution where both people can be happy. So don't be afraid to share information early on. You're also going to want to make sure that you're talking directly with the decision maker. If they're not there, get them on the phone and call them, or Zoom them, or FaceTime them, or what other things can you do video conferences with? If they don't speak English or they don't speak your language, please use Google Translate for them. And if all else fails, reschedule or leave. There is no point in trying to have a negotiation with somebody who can't actually make the decision. So make sure early on that the person you're talking with is the person that can make the final decision on behalf of their party. Another great practice is to rank your priorities. Let's say you're buying a car. You might say that for you, the first priority is the price of the car, the next being the model, and then the warranty, how many miles it has on it, its features, how many cup holders it has. I don't know what you prioritize in cars, but if you can rank that out, if you can do it before the negotiation, that's fine. But you can do it during the negotiation too. It lets the other person know what you value a lot. And then they can also make a rank of what's most important to them in this negotiation. Now, those things might not relate at all to what you are ranking as important. Maybe for them, they value price a lot, but they don't care at all about what model you choose. Maybe for them, they care about when you buy it by. And so you guys can nudge and negotiate and move areas for each other that the other person doesn't care about. Essentially, You can find ways to help each other find a mutually beneficial solution to this problem by ranking priorities. Before you walk into the negotiation, make sure that you have a target and a baseline already set up. A target is a goal. It's what you want. It's what you're trying to get it for. Whatever that might be, whatever the item might be, or whatever the price might be. And prices aren't always money. It could be time or energy or other things. The other thing is you want to have a baseline set up, and that is what you're willing to walk away from it for. So it's really important, if you don't set a baseline, they can continually whittle away at you until you're walking away getting nothing that you wanted. So you have to know when you're willing to walk away and at what point you know you already won. If you get the target that you want, you're happy with that, you're gonna be fine. You need to set that range before going into the negotiation. When people get into a negotiation, they're often very afraid of making the first offer. Nobody wants to be the first person to say what the price is, but data has actually shown that people that make the first offer, people that say, I'll give you this much for it, those are the people that actually end up having higher valued negotiations than everybody that makes secondary offers. There's a reason for this, and it's called the anchor point. Whoever says the price first is essentially stating what they perceive the value of the item to be, and the other party then has to base their price point around that initial set point. This is called an anchor point. It's really, really powerful. So don't be afraid to make the very first offer in a negotiation. Don't make a counter offer that is significantly different from your original offer. Let's say that your original offer is $100 and then they counter offer at $50. A lot of people will then make a follow-up counter at $75. They'll split the difference. This is a mistake. You initially created your offer at $100 to set anchoring, but also because you identified what the value of the item was before you walked into it. You set that anchor point. When they say 50, don't let them anchor you to that lower price. Maybe you drop it to 95, maybe you drop it to 90, but to drop it all the way to 75 shows that you don't really have security in understanding the value of what you're walking into here with. Not my best grammar. Let's move on. Silence is really, really powerful, and people feel desperate to fill it. They just feel very uncomfortable when there's silence, but it's okay to have silence. In fact, it's something that's really, really wonderful and really, really powerful. You can use that urge for other people to fill the silence and just let them do it. Just let them fill their own silence. So you can say, what are your thoughts on it? And then just be quiet, and you'll be surprised how often somebody will lower their price or somebody will throw in additional value to you just by your ability to sit there and listen and let them fill the silence with their own nonstop blabber. It's important to always get something if you choose to give something. So if you make a concession, then it's also important that you don't do that without adding some value on your end. Let me give you a couple of examples. I work in show business, or I have for a long portion of my life, and so I'll negotiate show contracts. And sometimes people will ask for a discounted price on a show. Well, I can agree to the discounted price, but maybe that means I'm going to have to leave out some important factors of the show. Maybe it means they're not going to get the full production, or we're going to have to reduce the length of the show. That's a way that I can help reduce the price for them, but I'm also reducing the expense for myself. Here's another example. Maybe I am renting out a property and the person that is signing the lease wants it at a lower cost. Maybe I can agree to that, but in exchange, I'm going to extend the duration of the lease. So every time I give them something, I make sure I get something in return, and you should do the same. As you get closer and closer to reaching the terms you want, as things start getting to the point where you're like, I think we've got this figured out, it's really important to make sure again, basically triple check upon the terms that you guys are setting in place. This is why people are using contracts. I mean, yes, there's a legal side of it, but ultimately it's to make sure that both parties understand exactly and explicitly what the agreement is, so that there's no surprises later on. There's full transparency. And if you want both parties to feel great about this interaction at the end, in a negotiation, it's vital that both parties know exactly what they're getting into, that other terms aren't being thrown in or extracted from. So make sure to triple check the agreed upon terms with both people before moving forward. So let's move on to the second part of this video, which is all about mistakes that you should avoid. The first of which being not asking for what you need. Have you ever heard the term, ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and the door will open? Well, if you don't ask for what you need, you're almost certainly not going to get it. There's something strange built into the human condition where we assume that other people know what we want when they don't. And if we don't tell them what's important to us, we're almost certainly not going to get it. And so that's the first mistake, but there's more. One of my favorite mistakes that I'll see people make during a negotiation is they will use the following sentence. They will say, "What is the least you will take?" And I know that sounds like a great negotiation tactic because essentially they're trying to get a person to negotiate with themselves, but it's actually a mistake, and here's why. What you're setting in place is you're getting that person to say, this is where I'm willing to walk away. This is my lowest point, and anything below that, I'm going to walk away from it at. Essentially, you've just forced them to create boundaries in the game, and people are very consistent, or they try and stay very consistent to themselves. So if they give you a price, if they put an anchor point now that is higher than you wanted it to be, they're no longer going to go any lower than that point. You never want to set somebody up to create a boundary. What's the least you're willing to take is a very bad move because now you can't go lower than that point. Instead, you want to actually find out, like, how much did you purchase this for? What are you willing to accept for this? Those are much better open-ended questions than creating boundaries as you go along. Another common mistake is always being the first person to talk. You know, it's really important to be a really great listener. That way you're going to find out the needs of the person you're negotiating with. Oftentimes people that are fast talkers, they think it's going to help them take the lead or help maneuver their opponent, when in reality all they're doing is giving away information, making the other person disdain the fact that they're not listening, and they're missing the opportunity to find things that the other person values that they can use to negotiate them with. Acting overly confident is also a really bad strategy. It's much better just to leave your ego at the door. A lot of people think that if they come in acting really, really confident, really secure, as though they know everything, they're going to be treated differently. But the truth is, it can actually be exploited as a trap. See, they might say, well, you clearly know what you want, and now you don't have really anywhere to go because you have to be the end-all, be-all source of all information because you're playing this confident role. On the other hand, if you're like, I don't know everything about cars, maybe I need to take this car to my mechanic to get it checked out, and that could be a really good thing to do. That might be able to buy you time because you're not comfortable necessarily making the decision without all the information in front of you. If you act overly confident, they'll assume you have all the information. So leave your ego at the door. It is the best practice. There's also a lot of scummy tactics that I personally like to avoid, but as I said, personally, these are tactics that I consider scummy, and morality is relative, so maybe these are not scummy tactics to you, but I consider them kind of scummy. If I see somebody doing these, I pretty much walk away. But the first of which is these commitment strategies. So let's say you walk onto a car lot and the person goes, hey, are you willing to purchase today? That's a commitment strategy. Or maybe they slide a business card across the counter and they're like, I want you to sign your name on that to get this conversation going. They're trying to get you to create a sense of commitment that you're now locked in. Personally, I hate this, and whenever it happens, I look for a different salesperson or I'll go to their competition. Another tactic that I find kind of scummy is when they give you a huge demand followed by a very small set of concessions. They might say, the price is this, and it's stuck there, but you'll get undercoating and free car washes for a month. And you might not care about free car washes, you might not care about free undercoating, but you do care a lot about the price. And so they basically made a massive demand, and then they make these little tiny concessions that they're willing to give you. The way to overcome this is what we did earlier, what we talked about earlier, where you create your list of priorities and you explain those priorities early on to them. That way they can't use this scummy tactic against you. Another scummy technique that I just hate is when they say, take it or leave it. All they're basically saying is, I have zero empathy, I have zero flexibility, I don't care about your needs, and I'm not creative enough to find a mutual solution. Generally what I do if somebody says take it or leave it is I completely ignore it and I just continue negotiating. And for some reason, almost every time, they'll negotiate. They'll continue to find new ways because once they're brought up into the idea that there's different angles, there's different ways to do something, suddenly that binary option of take it or leave it goes off the table. Another thing you'll see all the time is people playing good cop, bad cop. One of them is going to be the super nice person that's trying to make it happen for you, trying to make it work. The other one is trying to destroy you and get everything out of you. It's important to realize that these people are actually working together to try and get everything out of you. This is definitely a ploy, it's a technique, and it's kind of gross. So if you see this happening, realize that this is a technique to try and manipulate you, and it's worth avoiding. If you're in a negotiation with somebody who is continually comparing you to others, I consider them generally scummy. They might say something like, "You're a person of good taste," or "You identify quality," or "All the other customers were broke until you." You know what they're doing? This is a form of manipulation. You know, as soon as you leave, they're gonna be talking bad about you, just like they were talking bad about other people that they were comparing to you. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get you in a situation where you go, "Oh yeah, I do have good taste. Yeah, I do identify quality. So I'm seeing that this car that they're trying to sell me is something of high taste and high quality." Don't buy into it. They're trying to manipulate you, and I personally find it deplorable. A negotiation tactic that I find not only scummy, but kind of gross and legitimately immature is when people put their problems on you. For example, they might say, "You know, if I don't sell this, I'm gonna lose my job." Or they might throw a tantrum. I took a scam phone call the other day, and I decided I'm gonna let them just go with the flow. I'm gonna keep them on the line for a long time so they can't try and scam somebody else. And as they thought that I was buying gift cards, which of course I wasn't, they started screaming, they started throwing a tantrum, they started freaking out, and it was just like, this is so immature of them. Well, obviously, scamming somebody's insecure and immature, but that's not the point. The point is, if somebody's trying to put their problems on you, that is not your problem. That is not for you to deal with, and don't let them use this to try and pressure you into a situation that you don't deserve to be pressured into. A really clever and dubious negotiating tactic is what's called the red herring. This is what it looks like. They'll say, "We're really concerned about this thing," when they're not concerned about it at all. They might say, "Oh, yeah, I care. I'm really concerned about the price point, or I'm really concerned about the undercoating, or I'm really concerned about the structural integrity," when that's not a concern for them. The reason they say this is because they're throwing out things that don't matter at all in hopes that you're going to offer something more, add some additional value to them. Identify this early on. If somebody starts being like, they start pointing out something that matters a lot to them, that doesn't matter to them, by establishing what their initial hierarchy of needs was, you can identify what's a red herring at a later point. So figure out what their priority was early, then if they throw something else into the mix later, you can go, "You know what? I don't think that was actually a real concern that they had." That way you can avoid the red herring. If you're enjoying this content, and I hope you are, I hope you find it entertaining and educational, infotainment, maybe, is that a thing? Share this content with people that might also value it, and also please hit the subscribe button below. You can hit the bell if you want to as extra credit. I know you're an overachiever, and I hope to see you on the next video.